Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steven. It is time to do grades for the draft for the NFC and AFC, whatever the title of this video is. I think we're on the South here. So, as far as the grading goes, just a quick overview of it. Not going to go too in-depth here, but the player grades that you will see are 95% objective, and I have days 1 and 2 of the video from when I was live, where I did grade at the same time each of the players live as well. You can see that all on the videos on my channel, so go check those out if you're really curious about it. But it goes on a scale of S to F, S, A, B, C, D, E, and F there. And rounds 1 through 3, the baseline was an A baseline, meaning I gave the guy a second round draft grade and he was taken in the heart of the second round. It's a little bit more complex, so that's why I say in the heart of the second round, but that would be an A for the first 2 rounds. Rounds 4 through 7, if I gave a guy a 4th round grade and he's taken in the heart of the 4th round, that would have been a B for the baseline. So that was totally, objective, where we get a little bit of subjective, where you can see a little bit more of, is that a my guy? Did I love the fit, etc. would be for the pluses and the minuses. And mostly it's for if it's a my guy or not for the pluses. So those tell you a lot. They can be almost more important, and really are more important when it comes to the team grade than the actual grade that the player got often enough. So keep that in mind. Also, is the system perfect? No, it's not. But was it fair? Yes. It kept everything objectively the same in terms of the grading for the players. As far as the team grades, it's going to be 50% a completely subjective grade for myself, so those pluses will be weighed heavily in favor of me liking that team's draft. And then, of course, do I see the vision, etc., of that team's draft, or do I not? 35% of the grade will be the number of players and which round they are drafted in. Of course, the round that they're drafted in being higher helps that grade end up being higher there. 10% of the final grade will just be the actual player grades from rounds 1 through 3, and then 5% of the grade was the player grades from round 4 through 7, the average of those player grades in each situation. Without further ado, let's get on to the fun stuff here. Going on to the NFC South to start the video. This starts off with a hot one. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons are the talk of the draft in terms of clearly being, I assume, everybody's least favorite draft, with Michael Penix Jr. going off the board first. I had a first to second round draft grade on him, so this was a little bit too early for me, on top of the fact that I don't see the vision. I understand the logic. I do, obviously. I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. I get the ideology of taking a quarterback and letting him sit behind the pro and having a succession plan in place. I get it. The issue here is that this team is all in on a veteran contract quarterback who they just, they were supposed to be all in. That was the thought. But apparently...
That's great. Why? Because apparently you're spinning around, and apparently every time you get dizzy.
But apparently they're planning for the future as well. So, once again, I get it. I just don't agree with it like most other people. Why not give, Roma Dunze to your offense to just make it so nobody can stop your offense? It's a boat race, and then you fill in some of this defense the rest of the way, trade back from there, get some more capital to get a couple of extra, superstar-type pieces. I just don't agree with where this team went. But C- grade for Michael Penix. Ruka Aro gave that a B, a tiny bit too early for me, but I have no problems with that. Thought that was a nice draft pick there. Braylon Trice got an S- there. The minus just being that I'm not so high on Braylon Trice. I did think that this was a nice value for him. And I think he'll be a starter in the league, but nothing special, no superstar, in my opinion. Brandon Dorless, also great value, like him. 2 interior defensive linemen. I did have interior defensive line as a need in my second tier of needs for the team, so I get it here. A 3rd interior defensive lineman though towards the end of the draft, and we'll really get into it. Also, thought that was a reach for Zion Logue, not a Loge. I don't know. But not a guy that I loved. Brandon Dorless, though, is a very interesting interior defensive lineman. And what I will say about this, too, is they got help along their interior of their defensive line. This isn't 3 of the same guys. There are differences here. J.D. Bertrand got a plus. I really like it. He's a leader, which is always a good thing to have, especially at the linebacker position. Will he be great? We'll see. But I thought that was a pick where the value was correct, and he was my guy. Jace McClellan was a running back who had health concerns that may or will impact his draft status, is what I wrote as one of my notes on Jace McClellan. It's a B grade. This is roughly where I thought he would go, but the idea here being that if he didn't have those health concerns, he would have gone higher than this probably in the draft. So just something to like overall there. I think Casey Washington's not one of the wide receivers who I had scouted, so I'm unable to talk about that. All in all here, I don't love too much about the draft. The only guy who is a my guy is the linebacker J.D. Bertrand, and we have a my guy, a not my guy, two of them really taken too, outweighing that. So that's one of the few instances where we see that, and this is a team where I thought after the draft we could be, thinking they're serious Super Bowl contenders. Now I don't feel more confident about that. The future of Atlanta is a little bit brighter after post Kirk Cousins, but I don't know why we were worrying about that. So this was an E draft in terms of that subjective grading of mine, and all in all, at the end of the day, that came out to being a C-, which I believe is the worst graded draft that I have. So yeah, not very good there for Atlanta. That's going to bring us on to the Carolina Panthers, who took Xavier Legette to start out their draft. Followed that up with my favorite running back in the entire draft, Jonathan Brooks. What I will say about Xavier Legette is he was borderline like a guy who I'd put a minus on, but I didn't dislike Xavier Legette. In fact, there's a lot of things that I like about him, but I am very concerned about him with the fifth-year breakout and all. To me, I think, and this is where maybe I should have put a minus on this grade, but I almost should have, I almost think that the scale here for Xavier Legette's outcomes is Treylon Burks or A.J. Brown. And so I'm leaning towards the Treylon Burks kind of side of that. I didn't love everything that I saw from Xavier Legette, but I 100% understand and do see the upside with Xavier Legette. So I hope that he works out for you, Carolina. I'm just not so sure about it, and that was a little bit too early for me. But Jonathan Brooks, that was dead on with my ranking of where he should be taken in the draft, and he was a my guy, and I think he got one hell of a running back there. Followed by linebacker Trevin Wallace. Obviously, I thought that was quite a bit too early. Jatavian Sanders, nice find there. S-tier tight end to help that tight end room, which needed help, so it also fills a need. And then Chow Smith-Wade, I don't think there's anything special about that, but they need just a little bit more depth in that cornerback room, so I get it, and there's a little bit of upside with Chow Smith. But I think he's more of a floor guy. And then Javen Crumedy, thought that was even too early for him in the 6th round. Michael Barrett, however, I did like a lot, maybe 5th, 6th round draft grade on him. Another guy who's a leader of a linebacker, and I always like those kinds of qualities. In the end, one would have liked to get a center, but between undrafted free agents, veterans, and last year's Chandler Zavala, something could be figured out there, so that didn't hurt my grading there too much. Ignoring edge completely is a little bit curious for me, but it wasn't a great edge draft class, so I do see how that could have happened as the draft goes along. Double dipping at wide receiver would have been worth it in my opinion, so I'm already a little bit concerned about Xavier Legette, and then we didn't get a second wide receiver in here. I would like to see a little bit more help going towards our struggling Bryce Young in his second year. Still, this draft did get a B from me. I have no major issues. There's no players that I dislike, and there's a couple of players that are my guys here. So I landed on a B, and overall, the draft grade also came out to a B. So it's a B draft for Carolina. That's going to bring us on to the New Orleans Saints, who started off their draft correctly here, picking offensive tackle Taliesa Fuanga. No arguments with that draft pick at all. There are other guys that I might have taken before him, but maybe one other, really. It's a good draft pick, and it was exactly what they needed. Follow that up with a falling Kool-Aid McKinstry. Can't blame them for that. You get Spencer Rattler in here. That makes 100% sense for New Orleans. That did have quarterback on their needs list. Bring somebody in to maybe compete. S-tier, A-tier there for the first 3 picks of the draft, but first day 1 and day 2. Good. Obviously missing 3rd round capital, missing 4th round capital, but they didn't come into this draft with a whole lot of capital. You end up with a few of my guys here in Bub Means and Jalen Ford. I like that a lot. Bub Means, I think, was one of the few true X possible wide receivers. Big development guy. I don't expect you to get anything from him until year 3 at the soonest, if you ever get anything from him. But the upside for him, he was a gem for me in this draft. This was earlier than I thought he would go off of the board, so it was earlier than I had in my rankings, but I understand why he went this early, and so I'm not, like, when I do my overall grade for New Orleans, I'm not holding the fact that they took Bub Means early against them, because I guess I just, I don't know. I didn't follow my heart enough on him with his ranking. Jalen Ford, another guy who, this was a little bit too early for me here, but, and I think he's one of those, boom or bust. Christian Boyd, I wish we could have learned more about him throughout the process, but from what we saw at the Senior Bowl, absolutely loved him. So I couldn't quite make him a my guy, but that was an A pick. And Josiah Ezerim was of the many my guys who I had like 5th, 6th round-ish type grades on offensive tackle there. So I thought that they got a nice little deal on him, getting him in the 7th round. S tier plus for that. So ultimately, could the Saints have done this or that? Yes, but at the end of the day, I think that they made the most out of what they had to work with and really took a lot of good and or interesting prospects. I gave them an A straight up in terms of the subjective grading. I didn't realize it during the draft, but I really liked what they did. This kind of snuck up on me probably because, there was no 3rd, 4th round there that the time between all these picks, I couldn't keep track of their draft. But at the end of the day here, look at that. A B+ / A- borderline, A- borderline B+ there. Grade for New Orleans. So I thought this was a solid draft, worked with what they had. Would have liked, another tackle earlier, but I like the second tackle that they got. So good luck to, I don't know what you're in, New Orleans, a rebuild. I don't know what it is anymore. That's to bring us on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And all in all, it was a draft strategy that initially I was sitting at an A- on. I lowered it to a B+ for my subjective score. So let's look at this. We got Graham Barton, Chris Broswell. Graham Barton, somebody I gave to them in my final mock draft. Chris Broswell, I know most likely I offered, the Buccaneers took Chris Broswell at some point in my mock drafts, I would assume. Tyke Smith makes sense here. He's a my guy. Love it. All 3 of them got taken right in the area where I had them graded, so that was perfect for them. Jalen McMillan, wide receiver. This was a little bit early for me. I'm not, he's not a my guy, B- there. Same with Bucky Irving. Actually, Bucky Irving was right on with my ranking. Once we get to the 4th round, remember, the B is our baseline. So Bucky Irving just wasn't a my guy, and in fact, I'm a little bit concerned about him making it at the next level and being a contributor. I'm pretty certain he's not a 3-down back, but as far as being a contributor in a to a team for a long period of time, I'm just not so sure about it. But we shall see, and wish him the best luck. And his tape is really, really fun. I get why people like him a lot. Offensive lineman Elijah Klein, don't know about him. And Devin Culp to finish this up, tight end. I thought that made a lot of sense. I like that pick quite a bit. And this was, that fit the grading that I had on him, and also a my guy. And one more note on Bucky Irving was that I think that he's more of a backup than a complement to Rachaad White, as in, I don't think he's a committee for Rachaad White. I think he's a when or if Rachaad White goes down, you have somebody of a similar skill set that can come in and fill that role. So just a little observation of mine about that draft. But at the end of the day, my B+ stood all the other grading, and it was a B+ for Tampa Bay. So not a shabby draft for them at all. That's going to bring us on to the Houston Texans. And you can see all of the pluses there. I mean, especially look at that. The late draft class, Jawar Jordan, running back, my guy. Solomon Byrd, edge rusher, my guy. Love the upside of these guys. Marcus Harris, interior defensive lineman, my guy, I guess. Another guy who didn't stick at the top of my mind, but I remember grading him during the draft, and I went and I looked at my notes, and it was like, oh, he's a borderline my guy. And offensive tackle Ladarius Henderson gave a B+. Now, before we get to these earlier picks from the Houston Texans, in short, I felt that this was an S-tier drafting job by the Houston Texans on the whole here. Kamari Lassiter, their first pick at pick 42. Got that in A there. He's a physical, smart player, an excellent fit for a San Francisco 49ers team, thus an excellent fit for a Houston Texans defense. Then we go to the second pick of the draft, offensive tackle Blake Fisher, who I gave a C there. This was a little bit early for me. I am the low man when it comes to Blake Fisher. I viewed Blake Fisher as a limited upside starter with a high-end depth piece. But as I said, I was lower than most on him. Most think that the developmental upside is greater than I did. So keep that in mind there, Houston fan. Then we go to, Kalen Bullock, S+. I love Kalen Bullock. He is somebody who you're going to want to put at the back end of that defense and just allow him to be your safety net while maybe you take a couple of extra risks with your front seven, etc. So I really like Kalen Bullock in that role, and I'm sure that they'll do some fun things, and that's probably why they wanted a guy like that. Then in the fourth round to start day 3, they took tight end Cade Stover, got an A pick. This is, I had a third, fourth round grade on him, so the value was perfect in my opinion. And in terms of who he is, I think he's very much in a similar mold of Dalton Schultz, who found a lot of luck with C.J. Stroud in this system. So there's your succession plan. We know tight ends take a while to come around to it. So he was my tight end 3 of the class, and I think that he'll be a successful tight end in the league. So I did look into Jamal Hill a little bit, and what I do want to say is that I fit a different safety turned linebacker to the Houston Texans in my most recent mock draft, being Jalix Hunt. Instead, they got this guy Jamal Hill, who I don't know anything about. I didn't scout him, but I do know that about him. So I do, I'm in on the fit just because of that. Just a quick note. And then just to wrap this up, back to Jawar Jordan there with the S+ tier. I absolutely was alone on an island as far as him being my guy for me. As you can see, I thought this was actually slightly a good value, but a lot of people did not think he would be drafted. He's probably like 300 on the consensus chart or something like that. I had, I think, a 5th round draft grade on him. He's in my top 10 running backs. I liked him quite a bit. So here are the notes on him, since you probably didn't hear too much about him in the offseason. I wrote strengths. He is excellent when running behind a zone blocking scheme, not so much for a gap blocking scheme. So that works. He's a fit for Houston. I said that he's got good game speed. He shows some patience as he waits for a hole to explode through. One cut kind of back thing there, but patient. Good character and work ethic, and he's an asset in the passing game as a receiver, which Houston wants that as well. Weaknesses are that he is extremely slender, so durability is going to be a concern, but, Houston Texans, the Miami Dolphins, San Francisco 49ers, you tend to realize that they tend to take and like running backs who are more slender and have durability concerns, and oftentimes that does come to bite them in the butt. It's their kind of guy. Also, he's not going to break a guy's ankle in open space. Once again, a one-cut burner type of guy, and he does have a lack of power. Raheem Mostert's a guy who had a lack of power. You can build that up as you get a little bit older. But for now, he's a slash and burn kind of guy. He blew up in 2023, but he did have a solid 2022 in his first year as a starter, and I thought he's a gem of the draft. So congratulations, Houston. I think you got a good one there. We'll see if my running back... You know what? The fact that he got taken this high says that my running back's one of my better positions for scouting. At the end of the day, Houston gets an A/A+ for me, borderline there. Really, really strong draft. Makes a lot of sense for them. Blake Fisher really being the only hiccup for me, and Jamal Hill, 6th round or whatever. So, 5 my guys. Let's see how that turns out for you, Houston. I think it'll turn out real good. That's going to bring us on to the Indianapolis Colts. And we've got Laiatu Latu, my number 1 edge rusher, 2nd, I think, best defensive player for the entirety of this draft. I'd love to give him a my guy tag, give him a plus there, but that just goes without saying. He was great. I don't know that I loved him more than others, and there were, these injury concerns and everything surrounding him. The ceiling concerns where I decided not to give it a plus, but it's very close. It could be an S/S plus there. As far as wide receiver, Adonai Mitchell was definitely a my guy. I liked him more than others for sure. And he ends up falling in the draft for, I think, legitimate reasons, legitimate concerns, even more legitimate than I knew, from my perspective, stuff that came out post-draft for Adonai Mitchell in terms of him not taking care of his diabetes and that maybe having a lot of impacts on him and his performance on the field and whatnot. So if he can dedicate himself to the sport and get that all under control, I think could have a monster steal of the entire draft possibly here in Adonai Mitchell. So love that one. We got Matt Gonzalez is how you pronounce this next guy's name. He was also a my guy. I did not expect him to get taken this early in the draft. Had a lower grade on him than this. Nonetheless, obviously, I like the guy. I just, wonder if you might have taken him a little bit too early. To bring us on to another my guy here in Tanner Bortolini, who I was much higher on than most consensus, and I wanted to be even a little bit higher, but this ended up being pretty much perfectly in range. It appears that they are planning on using Tanner Bortolini as a guard, and in that sense, I do have some questions, some concerns about that translation. I like him as a center better. But nonetheless, my guy, and taken perfectly where I had him on my big board, so that was a B. Anthony Gold, my guy, receiver. Thought this was a little bit early, especially in this receiver class, but I also understand it. He was one of the guys who stands out for you, which is why he was my guy. Then we got wide safety, Jalen Carley's here in the 5th round. That was an F+. He's a my guy, but way towards the back end of the draft. I get it. I get the pick. But then, and this happened a couple times. This happens with the Green Bay Packers too. A team totally reaches for a guy in this draft, realizes, hey, maybe there's more risk than we feel comfortable with that. We need to double down, and they do that, and they take Jalen Simpson, where I thought this was a good value. I think I had a 4th round or a 4th, 5th round draft grade on Jalen Simpson. So I liked it more than Jalen Carley's, but Carley's isn't my guy. So I think between the two of them, helped to cover that safety roll up, and I like the strategy of doubling down when able to. So that works out. I obviously don't know anything, didn't scout the final 2 draft picks of this Indianapolis Colts draft. For me, when I look at this, it's not that complex. Yet again, the Colts used my own draft board, as you can see. Almost all my guys outside of 2 picks, and then they went off on their own. But it's an A for me. Although I may have drafted a couple of these guys in a different order, I still like them all quite a bit. It was an easy A. And at the end of the day, after we calculate everything else, it turned into just barely being an A, just outside of being a borderline A minus. So gave it a small, weensy tiny A. I really like the draft quite a bit there for Indianapolis. So congratulations, Indy. 2 years in a row, you're just taking off my board. And I think we saw quite a few of those guys work out pretty well last year. There's going to be a similar story here for Jacksonville. They like to take my board and kind of turn it sideways. I don't love what they did. They spent money on Gabe Davis. Then they went and they got a guy who, at least for the first year here, fulfills the same exact role. Of course, I could be wrong about that. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr. will develop into an X wide receiver quickly. But I have concerns that he will ever develop into that, much less in year 1. So we'll see. That being said, there's a flip side to that coin where I normally Brian Thomas Jr. is the kind of guy that I would love. For whatever reason, I didn't fall in love with him, and I actually have more concerns about him than I do positive. It's I kind of ended up on the opposite side of the coin compared to consensus for both him and Christian Watson for the Green Bay Packers a couple years ago. So I saw them both in a similar lens, but in one case I was very, very excited about the guy, and in the other I was more worried about the guy. Brian Thomas Jr. being the one that I'm more worried about. If he can stay healthy, though, my other kind of compish guy for him and Christian, different players to some extent, but Christian Watson, that would mean that you're getting some good stuff out of Brian Thomas Jr. So nonetheless, it just left confused about that when you spend all that money on Gabe Davis. I know you don't have a reality where you know that you're going to be able to get Brian Thomas Jr. at pick 23 of the draft and still be able to go back and then not pay. You didn't have the freedom to not give Gabe Davis the money at that point in time with any future knowledge. So I get that. After that, pick 48, Mason Smith, this was quite a bit too early for me. Total boom or bust prospect. A lot of development to go, much more development than I would feel comfortable with in terms of a guy that I'm taking on day one. But I do understand the ceiling that they see and liked. Another issue that I had with this draft was taking 2 slot cornerbacks. Apparently they plan on testing Darnell Savage out there. I guess they don't have a whole lot of confidence in that, or maybe that's a misreport. I don't know. But then they go and they get Jarrian Jones, which I thought the value was fine here, but just not my guy. I have concerns about Jarrian Jones. And DeAndre Prince, who obviously wasn't somebody who impressed me too much, getting an F grade there in the 5th round. So, I guess they're really securing up that slot cornerback, safety kind of triage there, figuring things out. Don't hate it, but it just tripling down is different than doubling down in my book, and it feels like they tripled down. Javon Foster is a guy who I really liked, offensive tackle. Another one of those like 5th, 6th round kind of guys where there was just a group of like all my guy offensive linemen. So this was a little bit too early for me, but I love it regardless of where you got him. Jordan Jefferson, don't love it regardless of where you got him. That was too early for me. Keelan Robinson, running back, I thought that this was really good value on him. I was actually maybe a little bit high on him, liked him quite a bit. So for the 4th year in a row, we take a running back here in Jacksonville. But it's a 5th round or whatever. Cam Little, kicker, 6th round. I don't love taking special teams guys, but they did. And then edge rusher Miles Cole's also my guy. So just like last year, I like the draft a little bit more as we get to the later round picks compared to some of the earlier round picks. Overall, this was a C- draft for me, despite getting several my guys, because it's not like, I felt like you needed a running back here. This, regardless of me liking the value for Miles Cole, is still a 6th, 7th round type of edge rusher that rarely works out. And then I just felt like you reached on a couple of the other my guy type guys here. So, it ended up being a C- for me. But I just want to restate here, I do definitely see the upside in Brian Thomas Jr., and I don't want to poo-poo that too much because he'll probably be pretty darn good. At the end of the day, though, it was a B- for the Jaguars draft grade. Once again, I don't think they're killing it in the draft process here, this group. But we'll see. We'll see as both of these last 2 years, develop and see where that leads this Jaguars team. That's going to bring us on to the Tennessee Titans. And this could have been in contention for an S-tier ranking from myself, if not for them picking at pick 7 there. I still think that it's strong, and it's quite possible that the phone lines weren't ringing at all there at pick 7. What I would have liked to have seen is them trade back from pick 7 with Las Vegas, which apparently, reportedly, as of shortly after the draft, and I know that some of this reporting got called into question, but apparently there were 3 teams that were reportedly called up for Michael Penix Jr. If Las Vegas was indeed calling up for him, I would have made that trade. And I think it's justifiable to look at the board and believe that, A, the Jets would have had Olu Fashanu higher than J.C. Latham on their board, given what they're looking for, and given the fact that Olu Fashanu is the exact opposite of what J.C. Latham is as a protector. So a little bit of scouting, understanding what other teams want could have led you to believe that J.C. Latham very well probably could have made it to pick 13 for you, and then you get that extra value. That's not what they decided to do. We don't know if they had the ability to do that. We don't know if it would have worked out like that, but I think that it's very possible it would have. So I get that they love J.C. Latham, and then maybe they had a different tier on him compared to others. They weren't willing to take that risk. But sometimes you have to take risks in order to earn an S tier, whether that risk is being ultra patient and just letting the board come to you and then taking guys who are falling or whatnot. So that is all. At the end of the day, I did land on an A- for this for my subjective grade. And there you can see, a couple of my guys. Fondre Sweat, somebody who I've projected is going as early as the first round throughout this process, early on in it. Then I kind of moved him more into a second round, third round guy, as the reality of him just not being a 3-down guy due to conditioning concerns, weight concerns, seemed all too real. And without being able to interview him and whatnot to see if I really think that there's a future where he becomes a 3-down guy in a couple of years, as a reality, that's where my concerns with him were. But still my guy. I love Tavondre Sweat. And then the big reason why he got an E plus here is I dropped them down in my rankings. I thought he would go day 3 in the 4th round, most likely. I dropped him to a 3rd, 4th round draft grade, I believe it was, maybe 4th round, and in part because I thought he would go later, but also because that brings more concerns that once again I definitely can't alleviate without having an interview with them. In terms of his partying and making stupid decisions. And I know there's some reports out there that it wasn't as, I don't know, there were some misunderstandings with the whole thing and whatnot. So maybe he shouldn't have been this low. Regardless, he's my guy. So for the overall grade, I mean, I gave it an A-, that. I really like the pick, and I think he's a great fit for them. J.C. Latham, also like the pick. Think a good fit was a little bit early for me at pick 7. That's why he got a B. Cedric Gray, though, perfect value. This is right where I had him graded in that 4th round territory, and he goes there. And I think that they got a good linebacker. I think he was my linebacker 5 of this draft class. Then they get slot cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Thought this was a good value in the 5th round. Thought he could go as early as early portion of the 4th round, really, and would have been fine with it. Jaquan Jackson, another guy that I like. I didn't love him, but I like him quite a bit. He's stuck in my memory. Gave him a B grading here because this is where I thought he would go, like that 6th round territory. Safety, James Williams. This is a good value for him. Absolute boom or bust pick in terms of James Williams. And edge rusher Jalen Harrell was my guy. I thought he could go, I don't know, 4th, 5th round maybe was what I had on him. I was alone on an island on that, so apparently I was wrong. But still ends up getting an A+ grade for him. And at the end of the day, the Titans grade here, even though I gave it an A-, was a B. And ends up at a B, which I think really shows how much of a boom or bust draft class that they had, as well as how much their day 2 picks here, the 4th round down there, salvaged the grading that this would have done. Because remember, that's 10% of the grade, this is 5% of the grade. And the fact that it's stuck as a B without 3rd round draft value as well, it tells you something about how strong they finished the draft out. But also, total boomer bust draft class for me in a lot of ways. J.C. Latham, I think there's a boomer bustness at tackle for him. I do think he could definitely kick down into guard if tackle doesn't work out and be fine there. Devondre Sweat, boomer bust in terms of is he going to party himself out of the league or something like that. James Williams, absolute boomer bust. So they took their shots, and it's going to work one way or the other for the Tennessee Titans. And that was it for the AFC and the NFC South. Thank you very much for tuning on in. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I keep forgetting to say that at the beginning of the video, but hopefully you made it this far. And hopefully you're enjoying these videos. I already released the East, the West, and the North will be coming tomorrow. So have a good night. Bye-bye.